Thea Stilton and the Secret of the Old Castle, read by Hosea Tongho. A motorcycle mouse. It was a beautiful May evening in New Mouse City. I had just returned from a fabulous trip across Mouse Island on my motorcycle, and I was in a great mood. Oh, pardon me, I almost forgot to introduce myself. My name is Thea Stilton, and I am a special correspondent for the Groenland's Gazette, the newspaper run by my brother Geronimo. I travel a lot for work, and my motorcycle is always by my side, like a true friend. That evening, I had just parked outside my apartment when my cell phone bleeped. Beep, beep, beep. I had a text message. It was a picture of my good friend Colette, Nikki, Pamela, Paulina, and Violet, seated on 3 brand new motorcycles. I called them right away, thundering cattails. You look fantastic on those motorcycle mouselets, Paulina laughed. Thanks, dear, I thought. You'd approve it. We're in Scotland on a mission in the Highlands. Travelling by motorcycle is great, Pamela added. It's almost like flying. That was the enthusiasm that had first drawn me to the Thea sisters. Ever since I taught them in a journalism class at Mouseford Academy, these 5 incredible mouselets had ceased to amaze me. They were my best students. Seeing them travel by motorcycle made me feel as though I was right there with them. Of course, I was wondering what they were doing in Scotland. And I'll bet you are too. So get ready for a rip-roaring new adventure with the Thea sisters. Bridget Mackinmouse. The Scottish saga began on a day like the others at the Mouseford Academy. During a break between classes, Violet ran in her friend and fellow student Bridget Mackinmouse. Bridget was shy and a quiet mouselet. She was always kind to everyone, but she wasn't very talkative. Nonetheless, Bridget and Violet had become good friends. They shared a deep love of music. Bridget was Scottish, and the 2 mouselets had started to tell each other stories about the culture and traditions of other cultures and countries. Violet was on her way to class when they spotted Bridget. She was struck by the worried look on Bridget's snout, so she scurried over to speak with her. Is everything okay, Bridget? We're still meeting in the auditorium to practice our duets this afternoon, right? Bridget smiled, but she looked as stressed as a rat in a maze. I can't, Violet. I have to leave for Scotland at once. There's a clan reunion to decide what's going to happen to the Mackinmouse family castle, and I can't miss it. Violet was curious. Is this that ancient family castle you told me so much about? That's it, Bridget said. It's in terrible shape, and we here need to decide what to do immediately. That's why I have to leave today. I'm sure everything will work out. Plus, you'll get to see your family. Violet tried to reassure Bridget. Bridget sighed heavily. That's true, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be a fun family party. But uncles and cousins do not bicker. But I have to be there. I have a mission to complete. My grandfather loved the castle. Violet squeezed Bridget's paws tightly. As soon as you get home, contact me, okay? Keep me posted on everything that's going on. Just then, Nikki popped out of the math classroom. Violet, come on! Now those paws. Class is about to start. Bridget and Violet said goodbye quick, and Violet scampered to class. A castle to save. The next evening, Violet kept checking her email. She was hoping to find a note from Bridget, but there weren't any new messages. She was about to call her friend on her cell phone when a text message arrived from Bridget. Mackinmouse Castle in danger? What could have happened? Violet immediately dialed Bridget, but all she heard on the other side was buzzing. She tried again, with the same result, so Violet ran to Paulina's room. Nick and Pamela and Colette were there too, doing the homework. Violet showed them Bridget's message. Bridget's asking for help. She was so worried yesterday. She was talking to some kind of mission. She didn't call you to explain. She sent you a text message? Colette asked. Yes, and when I tried to call her back, I just got this weird buzzing sound. Violet replied, What are we going to do? We can't ignore her cry for help. The friends exchanged serious looks. Pam squeaked first. Citizen spark plugs. You're right, Violet. Bridget needs us. I'm with Pam, Nikki added. As always, Paulina was practical. First, we need to learn a little more about the castle. Great idea, Violet exclaimed. I think I know someone who can help. Paulina's excitement quickly faded. Oh no, don't tell me you think of Professor Ratcliffe. Of course, Violet confirmed. The professor knows Bridget really well. She's Scottish too, and I see them chattering all the time. Colette nodded, and she studied the traditions of Scotland. Once she helped me with the research on Scottish kilts and tartans. Fine, let's go to the professor, Pam mumbled. Even though she isn't exactly warm and fairy. Margaret and Ratcliffe, professor of literature and creative writing, was in her office. Of all the teachers at the academy, she was the strictest. She kept the students on the pause, and there wasn't a more feared professor at Mouseford. Violet showed her Bridget's message right away. I'm very worried about Bridget, Macamouse Professor. See, she's asking for help. When the professor read Bridget's message, her expression changed immediately. Do you have any idea what this means? Not yet, Violet admitted, but Bridget was very upset before she left. The professor nodded. The castle is one of the oldest in Scotland. It's one of the Isles of Skye, and it's a treasure. Unfortunately, most of Alice's Macamouse's descendants have never attained the status of their esteemed ancestor. Nicky looked puzzled. She means that Bridget's great-great-great-grandfather was an honourable mouse, but most of her relatives are slimy sewer rats, Paulina whispered. Professor Ratcliffe often squeaked in this old-fashioned way, and Paulina was an expert at interpreting. Professor Ratcliffe sprang up and rummaged through her bookshelves and pulled out 2 fat volumes and one thinner own. The History of Scotland, Scottish Castles and Legends, and a Guide to the Isle of Skye. She said, giving the books to Pamela. You must prepare if you want to go to Scotland. Go to Scotland? The mouse exclaimed. Indeed, said the professor. As if it were obvious, some must investigate what's happening there, and it seems Bridget has put her faith in you. Professor Ratcliffe looked back, and each of the mouse looked over from snout to snout. I have faith in you two. Come on, let's go see the headmaster. Headmaster Octavius de Mouses. He wasn't quite as sure that the Mouses jetted off to Scotland. Professor Ratcliffe convinced him to make several phone calls. He moved seas and mountains in an attempt to get in touch with Bridget, but it was no use. She seemed to have disappeared. After much discussion with the Professor Ratcliffe, the headmaster finally gave the Thea sisters permission to head to the Isle of Skye. But I can only give you 4 days, including the weekend, the headmaster warned them. The Thea sisters packed their bags quicker than they could say chewy cheesecakes with chocolate on top. Even Colette managed to fit everything into a single backpack. The next morning, the boarded Vince Guy Mouse's hydroplane brought in early. They reached the Mouse Island just in time to catch the first flight to Glasgow. Violet seemed to send a text message the last of many to Bridget to let her know they'd arrived. But why wasn't Bridget responding? The mouse was sitting for a long flight. Violet and Paulina pulled the books Professor Ratcliffe had loaned them. Unfortunately, the guide to the Isle of Skye was old, and the information about how to get there was no longer reliable. Meanwhile, Pamela, Nicky, and Colette were making friends with 2 rattings from Spain who had planned a trip to Scotland. They had an up-to-date roadmap. By the time the 5 mice landed, Pamela knew everything there was to know about the Scottish highway system. Let's rent motorcycles, Pamela exclaimed, as soon as they left the airport. Motorcycles, Violet replied. Are you kidding? No, I'm serious. Pam replied. It's about 200 miles from Skybridge into Lochenshaw. Oh, a bike we can get there is less than 4.5 hours to get there. Violet wasn't convinced. I was thinking we could get there by train. Yes, but how could we get there around the island, Pam said. We need a way to get to the castle. We could rent a car, of course, but the roads are so narrow and windy that it would be hard to maneuver. With motorcycles, it would be much easier to get around. Yes, but we'll still need to cross the island. It's 50 miles, Colette said anxiously, fluffing her fur. That's going to do some serious damage to my dew. But Pam wasn't giving up so easy. Colette, the whole drive thing is going along the coast. Think of all those breathtaking landscapes. I vote for motorcycles, Nicky exclaimed, raising a paw enthusiastically. We're going to the Highlands, Mouselets. Don't you want to enjoy the countryside? Paulina nodded. Good point, Nicky. Well, okay, I guess we can try it, Violet said, giving in. Okay, Colette. Only Colette was still uncertain. What am I going to do without my backpack? Don't worry, Colette, Pamela replied. We'll rent motorcycles with big storages, and we'll find your backpack and put it in there. You see, it'll be like a wardrobe on heels. Colette responded with a nervous smile. Just outside the airport, the Mousets found a place to rent everything they needed. 3 motorcycles in perfect shape, filled them with gasoline, 5 helmets in a different color, jackets that were light blue, made of weather-resistant fabric, up-to-date back roads, and an emergency kit in case of a breakdown. They had just left Glasgow when the rain started to fall down. Brr, said Paulina, shivering. That's just how it is on the British Isles, said Colette, shrugging. It's frightful with the fur, but what can you do? They continued driving. After an hour's journey, they spotted Lac Lomond, the largest lake in the Great Britain. A patch with the blue sky appeared, and the sun peeked through the clouds. It lit up the rippling surface of the lake. On the other side, green hills sparkled in the mist. "Look at all the sheep," Nicky squealed with excitement, pointing to a white patch that was moving slowly on one of the hills. She was a sheep from Australia, so for her, seeing those sheep felt like coming home. Suddenly they spotted the top of a hill completely covered with a blanket of purplish leather and bloom. "How gorgeous!" Colette exclaimed with a sigh. A spectacular sight. The mouse had zoomed along, stopping every now and then to admire the beautiful countryside. The mountain tops were already sprinkled with snow. The sight of dazzling sunshine reflected by Loch Linen, forcing the Thea sisters to stop by. It was amazing. The mouselets stretched their paws. A check for the map showed them they had 46 more miles before they reached Kyle of Laclash, and they were starting to feel a little tired. It had been a long journey, but the wild beauty of the countryside was worth the effort. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was still plenty of road ahead of them. Pamila's calculations might have been a bit too optimistic. The mouselets had been making their way around Loch Duich when suddenly the weather got worse. A stinging rain started to fall. They stopped to discuss what to do next. "My belly's rumbling louder than a soaped-up sports car," Pamela wailed, rubbing her stomach. "And this humidity is a horror show for my fur," cried Colette. Violet frowned. She was so worried about Bridget. She stopped and hated to stop, but the road was going to get too wet to continue, so they had to make a detour. At the first crossroad, the mouses turned left. Tired and soaked, they continued along the next road until they found themselves in front of something spectacular. As it quickly rained down, the sunlight came out, and then it stopped, broke through the clouds, and illuminated the outline of the famous Elian Donan Castle. The castle's dark walls and its stone bridge looked as though they were suspended between the clouds. The ancient building stood on a small island surrounded by the 3 large lakes. The water reflected the pearl grey sky like a mirror. Paulina stopped and turned off her motorcycle's engine. The other mouselets did the same thing. The 3 sisters stood in silence, staring at this enchanting place. They felt as though they had driven straight into a fairy tale. Violet couldn't believe her eyes to think that it had started to rain again. They never would have had such a splendid sight. After a few moments, Colette squeaked up, "Okay, sisters, this is pretty much all of it, but I'm gonna get soaked into the fur." "Let's keep going," the mouselets agreed. They continued another few miles and found a nearby village where they could dry off and have a snack. After a nice cup of tea and some delicious shortbread, the 5 friends were ready to take off once more. Vroom, vroom, vroom. At last they reached Carve of Laclash and crossed the sky bridge. "Hooray, we're on the Isle of Skye!" Nicky cheered once they set the pole on the other side, but there was no time to stop and celebrate. With Violet urging them on, the mouses sped through Killikeen, Woodford, and Portree. The street signs flew up by quickly. At these sisters were getting closer to their destination. The farther they went from the Scottish mainland, the wilder and more untouched the countryside became. There were no planted fields, just green moors and dotted with purple heather and thistle flowers. Sparkling streams flowed down to the hills. Every so often, the mouses would turn a corner and see the cliffs and dropped off into the sea, and a few fisher mice huts along the small bays. At last they came to a sign that read, "Oak's Mouse." Finally, they had reached Bridget's village. When they got caught sight of the Mac-and-Mouse castle on a cliff at the edge of the village, the 3 sisters exchanged worried looks. Would they find Bridget waiting for them? Mac-and-Mouse Castle. Mac-and-Mouse Castle was built on a cliff overhanging the sea. It had a large tower on each side of the lower bridge at the entrance. The tower on the right was in good shape, but the tower on the left, 2 cracks and deep cracks. Part of the battlements had broken off and fallen into the moat below. The 3 sisters left their motorcycles in from the castle, where several cars were already parked, and crossed the bridge on Paul. The castle's courtyard was deserted, but they could hear the echo of angry squeaking from above. "Maybe the clan reunion had already started," Colette whispered. "Let's go," Paulina said, pointing to a wooden staircase that led up. They scampered upstairs and knocked on a door that had faint light streaming from behind it. No one came to open it. From inside, though, they could distinctly hear arguing. "You can forget it, Angus. We're not turning this castle into an amusement park." "Oh, yeah? Well, then I'm not going to give a cent for a restoration. Mac-and-Mouse Castle would disintegrate into a pile of rubble." The mouses exchanged looks. "Holy cheese, what a cat fight," said Nicky, shaking her snout. Pamela tried knocking harder. That was when she realized that the door was slightly ajar. "What should we do?" asked Colette. Paulina shrugged. "We didn't come here just to turn our tail and head home." Violet nodded. "That's right. Bridget needs us." So the sisters grabbed up their torch and pushed through the heavy door and went intimately Excuse us. They found themselves in a large room lit only by candles. Right in front of them were two big, mean-looking ratlings. They were identical in every way, with bristly fur that is as yellow as a slice of American cheese. They quickly blocked the mouselets. "Who are you?" the one on the right asked threateningly. "Those tourists," the other one said sharply. "This castle is private property. Get out, scram!" "But we're friends of Bridget McInmouse," Violet replied faintly. "She asked us to come." "Bridget!" the two rodents exclaimed. "Finally! Bridget's here!" someone shouted from the back of the room. "Should've wasted a lot of time, Mousie. Shame on you," a grumpy voice croaked. "In my day, we came on poor from the four corners of Scotland for clan meetings, and no one ever arrived late," added the third squeak, which was loud and shrill. The two rodents moved aside, and the theseus glimpsed the rest of the room. At the far end, a long, massive wooden table had a lot of mice sitting around it. Violet stepped forward. "Bridget isn't with us. We were hoping to find her here." An old thin rodent with a snout that was sharp as a cheese knife pounded on his first table. Bam! "This is too much. Not only is Bridget delaying our meeting, but she's invited strangers into the castle." An elderly rodent with snow white fur glanced at him. "Don't be so grouchy, Angus." Then she gave us the mouselets in an encouraging smile and gestured for them to come closer. "Your friends are Bridget's, my bee Barnes." "Where did you come from?" "We're classmates at Mousebed Academy on Whale Island," Violet replied, smiling back. "But I'm Violet, and this is Pamela, Paulina, Nikki, and Colette." The old mouse nodded kindly. "Welcome to Mackinmouse Castle, mouselets. I'm Leon, Bridget's aunt. Everyone gathered here belong to the Mackinmouse clan. Don't be afraid. Come sit with us, and together let's figure out what could have happened to Bridget." The rules of the clan. All eyes were on the theses as they explained their reason for the trip. Violet was the most conceived and concerned. "Bridget should have arrived days ago," she exclaimed. But we haven't seen her here," was the hasty reply from the Liam and Connor, the two ratlings with bright yellow fur. "That's enough!" Angus Mackinmouse burst out. He was huffer than a wet cat in a rainstorm. "I'm a business mouse, and I don't want to lose any more time. We only have 3 more days until the full moon. If Bridget doesn't arrive in time, we have to exclude her from the meeting. No exceptions for wee bratty mouselets." With that, he stomped out of the room. His sons Liam and Connor followed hot on heels. Colette wasn't able to hide her disappointment. "But aren't you worried about your niece? If Bridget isn't here, something must have happened to her. We Highlanders are tough rodents, and the rules of the Mackin clan are tough too," replied Orson, an ancient rodent with a long beard. "You see, the clan meeting takes place on the first day of the full moon and begins when all the clan members arrive. Even the youngest," explained the mouselets. "If someone isn't sure, they're left out." Clue. Angus and his sons don't seem too worried about Bridget's disappearance. Is it possible that they know where she is? "The Highlanders used to race to the meeting," said Orson. "Anyone who arrived late wasn't allowed to squeak." Lillian tried to lighten the atmosphere. "Come on, Orson. Maybe Bridget arrived without our noticing and has left some tracks in her room at the castle." The three sisters looked at one another. They were thinking the same thing. They had to check out that room. Speaking of Bridget's room, would you mind if we took a look?" Violet asked nervously. "Of course not, my dears," declared Lillian, although it was clear that the look on Orson's snout that he minded very much indeed. Ewan turned out to them. "Our caretaker, Ewan, will take you there. It's upstairs." At that, a young energetic rodent with a red fur scurried in. "Hi, everyone. I'm Ewan," he said cheerfully, gesturing for them to follow them. The Thea sisters thought he was pleasant and much different from Bridget's grouchy relatives. "So, you're friends of Bridget with Mousebed Academy, right?" Ewan asked as he led the mouselets along a dark corridor and up to a staircase. He led a flashlight to light the way. The young rodent seemed to want to chat. "Tell me, how does Bridget like the academy? Is she happy? Does she have lots of friends?" "She's very quiet," Violet responded. "But she certainly has friends. Us. We were hoping to find her here," Nikki added. "Since she left, we haven't had any news from her." Ewan stopped short. That's strange. She knows how important the clan meeting is." At this point, Pam couldn't hold back any longer. "Cross the catbirders! How come everyone knows what's being discussed in this meeting except us?" Ewan burst out laughing. "Stick with the mouselets. I'll explain a few things about the Mackinmouse clan." Families portraits. As they made their long way to the castle's long dark hallways, Ewan filled the thesis in. "You may see, my family has been working for the Mackinmouses for centuries." My siblings and cousins and I all take turns coming here to take care of the garden and do maintenance. We do it for the sake of tradition, not for love, not for the Macamouses. They seem like a very cranky bunch. Colette observed. Ewan laughed. Then, you can squeak that again. They hate each other. They've been fighting since the days of Ryan the Rough and Ethan the Spiteful. Now the future of this castle is at stake. And as always, the clan has split into two sides. Two sides? Nicky inquired. Yes, the traditionalists want to keep the castle just as it's always been, close to the public, unsafe, and without any comforts. There isn't even running water or electricity, as you can see, Ewan explained, raising his flashlight. Then he stopped. Look, we're in just the right place to talk about the characters in the story. Ewan and the Mouselets were standing on the castle's impressive stone staircase. The walls above them were covered in ancient portraits. Ewan shone his flashlight in a large painting that had faded with age. Alistair MacNamouse, the head of the clan that built this castle 1,000 years ago. He was a great leader who had a deep love for Celtic culture and traditions. This castle has been standing for 1,000 years, asked Pamela, amazed. Ewan nodded. It's been built many times, but the oldest parts have been connected to the new ones. Bonnie looked at the second row of paintings. What about those tiny portraits up there? Who are they? The Celt arrived in Scotland in the first millennia BC. They brought many of their traditions with them, including the use of the iron. Those are my ancestors, Ewan replied, blushing. MacNamou the Loyal was Alistair MacNamouse's squire. He followed him in all his adventures. Since then, his descendants have loyally served the clan and taken care of the castle. Ewan's chest swelled with pride as he squeaked. Well, if you ask me, it seems like there's not much to say about Alistair MacNamouse's descendants, Nicky commented. Ewan sighed. What you've heard is just the tip of the cheesy slice. The other side of the family can't wait to transform the castle into some kind of amusement park. The Mouselets looked at one another with alarm. This is why Bridget was so worried. We must find Bridget, Ewan concluded. The MacNamouses seemed all too happy. She's far away from this meeting. The Thea sisters agreed. It was time to take action. To Moley House. Unfortunately, Bridget's room was empty. She hadn't been there for months. Well, she had made it back in the Isle of Skye, but she definitely hasn't been in the castle, said Violet. Perhaps she's staying with her friends. Squeaking of staying somewhere. We need to find a place to spend the night, said Nicky. Could you recommend us a hotel or the village? Paulina asked Ewan. Sure, you're in luck. There's only one place to spend the night in Oaksmouse. Molly House, and Molly just happens to be my mother. Half an hour later, the Thea sisters had settled into a welcoming inn belonging to Ewan's mother. Everyone was quite seated comfortably at a table in front of a fragrant plate at the callback. Yum, what a meal, Pamela exclaimed, her cheeks full of food. It's not over yet, Ewan replied, licking his whiskers. Just wait until you taste my mother's specialty. Yum, what is it? Colette asked. Apple cake with the custard, which is warm vanilla sauce. Ewan exclaimed. The masters all sighed with anticipation. We should stop eating now to leave some space in our bellies, Nicky said. The welcoming atmosphere of the inn was as different as one could imagine from the damp chill of the MacNamouse castle. In the main dining room, a fire crackled brightly in the stone place. Ewan's brother and sisters served the tables and helped their mothers in the kitchen. You're not giving them a pull, Paulina asked. The rattling shook her snout. Not this week, because it's my turn at the castle. Danny winked mysteriously. Well, later on, I'll help you too. You'll see. During dinner, Ewan squeaked a lot about Bridget and his new friends. Bridget and I have known each other since we were wee little mouselings. She's always been very shy. Some people think she's snobbly, but she's just a kind and sensitive mouselet. Colette elbowed Pamela, who, taken by surprise, accidentally swallowed a big mouthful of chappy tatties. Pam exclaimed, what was that for? Colette gestured for her to lower her squeak. Have you noticed how Ewan's eyes light up whenever he talks about Bridget? She whispered conspiratorially. Truth be told, Bridget was the only topic of conversation at their table. No one could think of anything else. Where could she be? Why hadn't they heard from her? Maybe she's staying with a friend in the area like Pamela suggested, said Paulina. She was trying to reassure Ewan, whose expression had darkened. Of course, why didn't I think of that? But tomorrow I have to return to the castle, so I won't be able to look for her. Leave it to us, Ewan, Nicola declared. We'll do it. All we need is her friends. Just then, one of the Ewan brothers called him from the kitchen. He scurried away. A few moments later, the sound of the bagpipes made everyone fall silent. Ewan and his brothers came in from the room, singing a sweet song in an unfamiliar language. It was an ancient Celtic ballad. The mouse smiled at one another as they listened, but then Violet grew serious again. Hearing this music made her worry about Bridget once more. Where could she be? The next morning, Nicky jumped to a pause the moment her eyes opened. She was a morning mouse. Wake up, sleepy mouse, she called to her companions, who took a bit of a longer to get up. The motorcycle journey had worn them out. Nicky, do you always have to be so cheerful in the morning? Pamela groaned, pulling her covers in her snout. Some of us need a bit more sleep, thank you very much. Violet scampered out of bed. Nicky's right. We're here on a mission. Let's go, mouselets. A few moments later, the Thea sisters trooped down to breakfast, where they were surprised to find that Liam and Connor back in the house reading the newspaper. Because of the twins' blonde fur, the Thea sisters had nicknamed them the Golden Grumps. When Violet greeted them, they replied with a polite grunt. But the mouselets had plenty of other things to do, like the delicious breakfast Ewan's mother had prepared for them. While Paulina bit into a piece of apple pie, the others dove into the bowls of cold porridge with cinnamon sugar, with crispy pastries on the side. They're called Ardennes rollies, and they're eaten warm with butter and bitter orange marmalade, Molly explained. Then she nodded towards the twins and whispered, Those two never come here for breakfast. I think they must be here for you. Interesting, Violet mumbled. They're not worried about Bridget, so they must be keeping an eye on us. Nicky crossed her arms annoyed. I can't stand those two grouches. And I like their dad even less. Little Colette agreed. When we arrived last night, it was Angus who insisted on starting the meeting without Bridget. What if they think they can stop their sisters? They're in for a big surprise, Paulina declared. You said it, sister, Pam agreed, jumping to a pause. Let's go grab our gear and jump onto our motorcycles. I'd like to see those golden tries. I'd like to see those golden grumps try to hold us back. When those mouselets came back down from their rooms, Connor and Liam had disappeared. Nicky shrugged. Come on, mouselets, let's go find Bridget's friends. With a long rumble, they headed out on their bikes. Bernadette slowed down right away. Since the road along the coast was very narrow, it hugged the jagged coastline. The clouds in the skies were reflected by the dark ocean waves. For long stretches, the road was wide open, enough for just one vehicle. If someone had been trying to go the opposite direction, the mouselets would have had to wait for them to pass. But the Thea sisters didn't run into any problems that morning. Way to go, Pam, Violet said admiringly. Your motorcycle idea was pure genius, double genius. Paulina agreed. But mouselets, we got company. The twins' jeep had been following us for a while. Let's lose those twerps. Room. The mouselets gave it their all, but they weren't able to push much distance between them and the jeep. Those two know the island better than we do, Nicky grumbled. After a few more bends in the road, the mouselets found themselves just the solution they were looking for. A flock of sheep. As soon as Nicky saw the sheep in the pasture, she had a fabulous idea for getting rid of their pursuers. While the others continued, she stopped her motorcycle, then she started to shout at the flock, waving her paws to the herd of sheep. A few moments later, the flock was blocking the road. When Liam and Connor jeep arrived, they had to slam their brakes to avoid those sheep. They kicked up a huge dust cloud. Nicky hopped back on the motorcycle, and she and Violet took off at full speed, waving at their two followers. Bye-bye. The twins had no choice but to stay where they were, scratching their snouts. A little bit ahead, the other two motorcycles had stopped to wait. Nicky just sharpened in a block of cheddar. Nicky cheered, and Paulina cheered. The mouselets resumed their ride. Soon they found themselves at the crossroads at Pamela's signal, and hit their brakes off to get to the motorcycles, and hid behind the thick bushes in the woods. They then waited. A few minutes later, the twins' jeep took the road to the right and zoomed ahead. Smoking Swiss cheese, Pamela shouted triumphantly. We've lost them. Now they were certain they weren't being followed. The Thea sisters emerged from their hiding place and took the road on the left. But just when they least expected it, an old van blocked the middle of the road. There was no way to get past. An unfamiliar rodent stood there with a sour look. It was difficult to see how old he was. There was a thick lump on the white fur between his ears, but his paws were solid on the ground. His back was straight, and his arms were as strong as a young rodent. Who could he be? An accomplice of the twins? Another member of the Mac and Mouse clan? After he examined them one by one of the rodent, "Sure, you're the famous Thea sisters. Well, it sure took you long enough to get rid of those two goons. Come on, follow me." They got into the van and turned on the engine. The mouselets were squeakless. They exchanged looks of confusion. Could they trust the strange rodents? The old rodent noticed that they hadn't moved. He stuck up his snout on the windows and shouted, "Well, hurry up then. We're just waiting for you at the lighthouse." To the lighthouse. When the Thea sisters reached the lighthouse, a slim figure came to meet them. From far away, she could only see this rodent was wearing denim overalls and a tartan beret. A high squeak greeted the Bridgets. "Violet, Mouselets, welcome to Fidget Point." Violet jumped off her motorcycle and ran to embrace her friend. The others joined in. They hugged Bridget tightly, peppering her with kisses and questions. Smack, smack, smack. "What happened? Why are you hiding?" "Why haven't you answered our calls? We've been so worried about you." Bridget's big grey eyes filled with tears. "Mouselets, it was as horrible as Aunt Gina's home cooking haggis. It's my cousin's fault that I lost my cell phone. I barely managed to send a text, but I was sure you'd come help me." Bridget led the sisters inside the lighthouse and the old watchtower that had been turned into a home for its guardian. She introduced them to a rodent who had first met them when they arrived at the lighthouse. "This has been the guardian of the lighthouse and a dear friend." With a wave of her paw, Ben invited the mouselets to enter the only room in the lighthouse. Inside there were nets, fishing poles, and model ships. The one pieces of furniture were a long wooden bench with a rocking chair. "Sean McNamouse, Bridget's grandfather, was my best friend," old Ben explained. "In our youth, we shared many things, including a great passion for sailboats. When Sean grew tired of his clan's constant arguments, he would take refuge here in the lighthouse with me and my bagpipe. That's why I turned to Ben at this dangerous time," Bridget said, prickling up Ben's tail. "When I got off the ferry, I found Liam and Connor waiting for me." "The old golden grumps," the Thea sisters exclaimed. "Ha ha ha," Bridget laughed. "What a perfect name. Yes, all I can say about my cousins is that the cheese don't fall far from the cracker. They wanted me to support Angus's idea to turn the castle into an amusement park." "What a catastrophe," Ben declared, his eyes glittering with indignation. Bridget continued, "Liam insisted that I get in the Jeep. 'Do you want to be a guest at our house?' he said." "Guest? You're right," Pamela snorted. Bridget nodded. "That's right, what I thought. I knew they just wanted to keep me from participating in the meeting, from voting against them. The decision has to be unanimous, you see. So I escaped, but there was two of them, and it wasn't easy to get away. I jumped onto a boat and docked to the dwarf. But just as I sent a text message to Violet, a wave rocked the ship and my cell phone ran into the sea. At least she received my call for help." Ancient history. As she was listening to Bridget's story, Violet suddenly remembered something. "Bridget, before leaving the academy, you mentioned that you had a mission to complete. Can you tell us what you meant?" Bridget nodded. "That's exactly why I asked you out for. I can't do it alone. There isn't enough time. Before I explain, you need to hear a bit of history. The ancient history of the Mac and Mouse clan." Then she turned to Ben, who sat in the rocking chair. "Do you want to tell it, Ben?" "No one's better than you." Ben nodded, a serious look on his snout. Alistair McNamara was a strong and courageous leader, but he also loved the culture and traditions of his people. So, he called to his court and the most famous bard of the time, George, to sing about the ancient Scottish heroes and preserve the memory of their deeds. George was very loyal to Alistair, and just like the Malcolm the Loyal was always by his side. Thanks to his ballads, we still know many details of the history in McNamara's and the castles, like the story of Warrior Stones. "What are Warrior Stones?" Colette whispered. Ben heard her question and began telling the story. "Long ago, before leaving for battle, each Scottish warrior left a stone on the ground, carved with a symbol or a message. The stones form a pile. When they return from battle, each warrior picks up his stone. The warriors who didn't return were remembered by the stones they had left behind." The Thea sisters listened entranced. Ben continued, "Alistair McNamara used these ancient stones when he built his castle, placing them in particular spots so they wouldn't be scattered. That way, there would always be a record of warriors who hadn't returned from the last battle." The mouselets hung on every last word. "What a fascinating story." "Alistair did not have direct descendants," the old guardian continued. "Just two nephews, Ethan and Ryan, who were jealous of each other and always arguing. Alistair knew they would be in charge of the castle. The clan would always be arguing and fighting. Unfortunately, he was right, Bridget sighed. According to legend, continued Ben, on a winter's night during a storm, Alistair placed a piece of parchment on George's paws. At his will, it contained the name of the heir of the castle and the McNamaster's treasure. When the portrait of Ethan and Ryan in the gallery, they appeared together, Pam observed. So Alistair's will didn't name one heir, but two. You're an excellent observer, Pamela, Ben said. But actually no one knows who was chosen as heir, and it wasn't necessarily one of the two nephews. Only George knew the contents of the parchment, but after Alistair's death, he disappeared, taking his secret with him. Since no one knew what the will said, the two nephews assumed power together. Bridget interrupted, upset. My grandfather found some very old papers in the castle, signed by George himself. They didn't contain the name of the heir, but they showed that Ryan and Ethan had tried to destroy their uncle's will, so they could secure the castle and the treasure for themselves. But why would they destroy it if it named one of them? Pauline asked. An excellent question, Ben agreed. It almost makes me think it didn't name them. But we may never know for sure. He shook his snout. George escaped by sea, followed by the two brothers. Before he went, he left his ballads as testimonies of everything that had happened. Then he hid them, and the treasure in a place that only a true Highlander, loyal to the tradition, would know how to find. So that's how Ethan and Ryan took over, Nicky said indignantly. Why then? They tried. Bridget replied, Ethan and Ryan took over the title, but they never stopped arguing and getting each other's way. And now, that's how it's been for all the McMouse's descendants, even today. So your mission is to find the lost will, Violet guessed. Bridget smiled, pleased. I knew you'd understand. Ben and Bridget's story explained a lot, but Nicky was still a bit perplexed after years and years of his family's feud. It's a miracle the castle hasn't fallen into ruins. Bridget's expression softened. It's all thanks to Malcolm's descendants, who have always taken care of the castle and loved the dedication. Ben is one of them, and we've met another one, Colette interrupted. A very cute ratling named Ewan. Ewan is my oldest grandson, Ben said. He doesn't know that Bridget's with me. I don't want him to leave, to have to keep that secret while he's at Macamouse's at the castle. Yes, Ewan is a very honourable mouse, said Bridget, who always carries out the clan's traditions. She was blushing from the tips of her whiskers to the tip of her tail. Colette winked at Pamela mischievously. Violet, on the other hand, Paul was all business. So what's our next step? Come with me, Bridget said, leading them upstairs. The mouses found themselves in a room with a ceiling that was a very long staircase shaped like a snout. It curled up and up, all the way to the top of the lighthouse, where there was a room filled with books. Files or boxes containing documents. This place is a bookworm's dream, Paulina exclaimed. My grandfather was a student of history. Bridget explained. He got sick of the clan's constant bickering, and he was determined to find out, once and for all, who was the legitimate owner of the castle. Bridget stroked the cover of an old book. These were all the documents that he collected. He left them to me when he passed away. Now I had 2 days to help answer, which is why I need your help. Pamela's eyes widened. You want us to read all the stuff? Bridget laughed and shook her snout. Of course not, according to my grandpa. George hid the will in the castle. I need to keep researching here. But it would be great if you could take a look around the castle. George was famous for his ballads, but also for his sharp wit and his riddles. Maybe he left some kind of clue. Sure thing, sister, Pam exclaimed, relieved. Sounds like a good plan to me. You and Ben take the books. We and Thea sisters will take action. Everyone burst out laughing. Old Ben was beaming. He was delighted to see that Bridget had found some devoted friends. The Ballad of Three Stones. While Bridget stayed at the lighthouse to sift through her grandfather's documents, the Thea sisters returned to Molly's house. As soon as the mouses scurried through the door, Ewan ran to meet them. Have you found Bridget? I was starting to get worried about you too. We've got good news, Violet responded. As soon as Ewan heard that Bridget was okay, he smiled from ear to ear. The mouselets were forming and starving after the day of adventure. Fortunately, Molly had wonderful barley soup for dinner. Yum, cried Pam as she rubbed her belly after the meal. That was Whisker looking good. After dinner, the inn's guests laughed and chatted. Some of them even started to dance. Ewan led these sisters into a Scottish jig and made their paws prance, their fur, and fly. Paulina gasped after the final spin. What a workout! Then Ewan put on some show. Sweet, sad music as his sister, Lizzie, began to sing an ancient Celtic ballad. The three sisters clapped enthusiastically. Can you translate it for us, Ewan? Violet asked as the Ratling plopped down next to them with a cold drink. It was the Ballad of the Three Stones, Ewan explained, his eyes shining. It was written by George the Bard at the time of the Alistair's Mackermouse, actually. It goes like this. The castle's walls hold 3 stones. The stone that squeaks, the stone that cries, and the stone that fishes. The stones can be opened with a flower, but only one, with 2 wishes. Erwin shrugged. No one knows what it means, and lots of rodents have tried to figure it out. The Mystery Tapestry. The next morning, the sisters headed to the castle bright and early. We'll see you later. If you have a guidebook with information on the castle, we'll be fine. The mouselets were just deciding where to begin when Angus appeared in front of them, accompanied by Liam and Connor. Good, look who's here, Bridget's friend, Angus observed with a nasty smile. But what a shame that my delightful niece still hasn't arrived, and the moment for the clan's decision is drawing near. Pam looked like she was about to burst and with a sassy resort. Colette had to put a paw on her shoulder to restrain her. The Thea sisters didn't want to reveal Bridget's plan. Yes, Connor snickered. Something tells me that our Dar's plan is going to off without a hitch. Well, if that's the case, we'd like to visit the castle where it's still standing, Violet replied coldly. Angus looked like he wanted to throw them out, but Bridget's aunt, Lillian, stopped them. That's a request we can't refuse. For our clan, hospitality is sacred. Angus chewed his whiskers, but he couldn't argue with his sister, so he insisted that a family member tag along with the mouselets. Erin will accompany them, he declared with a look on the deaf finality that didn't mean anything good. She'll keep a close eye. She'll show them all the most interesting parts of the castle. Erin's Bridget's cousin was the youngest of the McNamouses. As soon as she arrived, she exchanged scheming looks with Angus, and it was clear whose side she was on. With Erin hanging around, we won't be able to look for the wool. Paulina whispered. Pam shook her snout sadly. She's going to stick out closer with a glue trap, I can tell. Erin lazily led them to a bright lit room on the 2nd floor. How beautiful, Violet exclaimed, noticing a tapestry that covered the entire back wall. So old-fashioned, Erin muttered. The tapestry featured knights and ladies from other times. They were dancing amid from another time. They were dancing amid in gardens and flowering trees. It's strange, the garden, Violet noted. The hedges reminded me of something, but I'm not sure what. Pauline leaned in to get a closer look at the pattern. You're right, Violet. She put out her guidebook. This must be what you're thinking of, she exclaimed. The garden in the tapestry is actually made of a map of the castle. Really? Erin asked, curiously. Colette realized that this would be a good time to distract her. Are there any historical clothes in the castle? She asked, taking Erin by the paw. I don't really like old tapestries, but I adore those big gowns from long ago. You know the ones with the old lace? Erin turned away from the tapestry. Absolutely, there are a whole wardrobe full. Ooh, can I see them and maybe try some on? She sounded genuinely enthusiastic. But as she squeaked, she cast a sneaky look at her friends, and it got in the act too. Me too, she cried, and she whispered to Pam. We'll keep her busy for a while. You 3 start looking for that wool. Once Erin and Nikki and Colette had scurried off, Violet gazed at the tapestry. The castle walls hold 3 stones. The stone that squeaks, the stone that cries, and the stone that fishes, she mumbled. What? Pam asked. I can't hear you, V. What are those words to the ballad of the 3 stones? Violet replied thoughtfully. She pointed to the tapestry's pattern, looking at the mouse. She's fishing. You're right, Pam agreed. And look at that one. It looks like she's squeaking. And this one she's crying, added Paulina, pointing to her 3rd mouse. Just like the 3 stones in the ballad. My grandfather Chin always says, when too many coincidences pile up, perhaps they are not coincidences, Violet said solemnly. Paulina compared the tapestry to the map of the castle and drew 3 X's that correspond to the position of the 3 mice. The mouse who squeaks must be in the kitchen, she said at last. The mouse who cries must be in the ruined tower, and the 3rd, well, she must be outside the castle. So let's start in the kitchen, Pamela suggested. It's the easiest thing to find. The kitchen was a big stone room with 2 large fireplaces and a copper pan of various sizes hanging on the wall. The 3 sisters spread out. Pamela peeked out the window and overlooked the vegetable garden. Big black clouds warned the arrival of a storm. Paulina inspected the 2 fireplaces to see if anything was hidden there. Violet poked around in the clay pots and the sacks leaning forward against them. They contained 4 flowers, potatoes, and other kinds of food. Behind them, she noticed a marble plaque. Hey, mouselets, Help me move these sacks. On the wall was a tablet carved with the heads of animals with their mouths open as if they were squeaking. The stone that squeaked, Pauline exclaimed. That was a look of alarm crossed her snout. We don't need to move it, do we? The stone was cemented to the wall. There was no way the mouselets could have moved it without a chisel and some serious muscle power. Well, if the wall was sitting there, we'll have to find a way to open it, Pamela replied. She pulled out a piece of stone that stuck out, bronze. A thursul whistle of flower sit in the center. Maybe under here. Oof! That's an opening, Pam suggested. She gave it all her might, but the stone didn't move an inch. It stuck like a trap on the tail, she sighed. The parchment. Violet pondered the situation. What if we use some butter to grease the side to the stone? There's got to be some in the kitchen and the cellar for sure, Paulina said. She scampered down to the basement. Sure enough, there was a huge package of butter in the basement pantry. The mouselet sliced off a generous pat and rubbed it all on the bronze flour. As soon as the stone was good and greasy, Violet pressed on it, trying to slide it upwards. After a moment or two, something clicked. Clank! The center of the stone opened like a little door, revealing a compartment carved into the marble. There was something inside. Violet reached in and carefully pulled out a small ancient box. By cheese, I think you've got it, cried Paulina excitedly. Violet and Paulina opened the box carefully. Inside lay a single sheet of parchment. Violet immediately started to read, but her smile quickly faded. It's not Alistair's will. How can you tell? Pamela asked. Disappointed, she leaned over her friend's shoulder, struggling to decipher the jagged and smudged poor writing. Because it's signed George the Bard, Violet noted. Paulina pointed out several names on the document. Look here, I see the names Alistair, Ethan, and Ryan. They're the mice from the story Ben told us. So now we need to look for the other stones from the ballad, Pam concluded. She had just finished squeaking when the door to the kitchen burst open and then Liam and Connor stomped in. Hi, Violet tried hiding the parchment behind a tail, but it was too late. The twins had seen it. Before the mouses could stop them, Liam had pushed Pam and Paulina into the cellar, while his brothers had ripped the parchment out of Violet's paws and dragged her after her friends. The mouses struggled to escape, but it was no use. The twins were too strong. Rat mushroom rattlesnakes, what do you think you're doing? Cried Paulina. You're messing with the wrong mice, Pam warned them. You'll be sorry that a cat and a dog kennel by the time we're through with you. Shut your snout, Liam cried. He tied up the three friends and gagged them. Then Connor took their cell phones and Liam left, bolting the cellar door behind them. Upstairs, the twins immediately called Angus to tell them about the parchment. Liam and Connor were each as huge as overweight tabby cats, but they weren't very bright. But they didn't dare to do anything without their father's permission. Angus listened to the horrible things that his sons had done without batting a whisker. But when he heard about the parchment, he jumped up. Well, what does it say, you cheeseheads? I don't know, Dad. It doesn't make sense, Connor replied. Angus immediately concluded that it must be the lost will. Burn it, and keep the busy mouth quiet until the end of the meeting. I'm certainly not going to let some silly will ruin my plan. Like rodents in a mousetrap. Meanwhile, Colleen, Erin, and Nikki were busy doing a fashion show. What had started as a distraction was turning out to be kind of fun. Inside the old chests and wardrobes, the mouses had discovered stained ribbons, velvet gowns, and feathered hats and silky shawls. Colette and Erin and Nikki were trying on outfits and chatting away like old friends. That was when Liam and Connor swooped into the room. They pounced on Nikki and Colette and tied them up with some old wool scarves. What are you cheater faces doing? Has the cheese slipped off you crackers? Erin shrieked at her two cousins. Shut me trap, Erin. Erin snapped. Connor snapped. If we want your opinion, we'll let you know, Liam snarled. After they gagged Colette and Nikki and took their cell phones, the twins threw them in the cellar of Pamela, Paulina, and Violet. The five mouselets looked at each other sadly. What next? Meanwhile, Angus had decided there was no time to lose. The clan meeting needed to happen right away, before anyone could discover what his sons had done with the Thea sisters. Now the majority is on my side, the old rodent thought, but if Bridget arrives, who knows what might happen. More determined than ever, Angus joined the members of the clan in the great hall. No more delays, he cried. We've already waited too long. We're not leaving here without making a decision. But there's still one more day until the full moon, Lilian protested. Yes, but there are new cracks in the tower, Angus lied shamelessly. If we don't start renovations right away, this castle will collapse on top of us. Outside, the wind was gusting. A stinging rain started to beat down the windows. Ewan came in from the gardens and started looking for the Thea sisters. He was hoping they had been discovered something. After wandering through half the castle and finding no traces of the mouselets, he suddenly came across Liam and Connor. He was slipping out of the kitchen with sneaky looks on their snouts. Ewan waited till they were out of sight. Then he rushed into the kitchen. Colette, Nikki, Pamela, Paulina, Violet, are you in here? Not everything burned. The kitchen was quite empty, but Ewan glimpsed into the fireplace and noticed something had been burning. He poked around and between the flames with the fire tongs, but all he found were ashes. He was about to leave, then thump! A loud thumping sound came from the cellar. Someone here, Ewan shouted. Thump, thump! Down in the cellar, Thea's sisters, still banging and gagged, had heard him calling. They were banging their paws against the wall in a desperate attempt to get his attention. After a moment or two, the cellar door flew open. Pam whispered. Pamela, Ewan exclaimed, astonished. Nikki, Violet, Paulina, Colette, what are you doing here? Wrapped like balls on a fresh mozzarella? He hurried over and started untying them. As soon as her mouse was free, Nikki gasped, It's those terrible twins! Yes, the two grouchies, Liam and Connor. Violet grunted, pulling off the gag. After this experience, I think we can safely upgrade them from grubs to slimy sewer rats, said Paulina, rubbing her sore ankles. We just found out one of George's parchments, Violet explained, but they took it, and they burnt it in the fireplace. Ewan finished it for her. I saw it in there. Now it's just ashes, unfortunately. That's not right, Colette moaned, shaking her snout. Not everything has been burnt, Paulina said. We've still got 2 stones to find. Maybe one is hiding the will. We must find it before they know we're here, Nikki declared. Ewan was baffled. Stones? What are you squeaking about? There's no time to explain, Pam cried. We'll tell you everything on the way. Where are the other stones, Paulina? Paulina pulled the guidebook out of her pocket and looked around for a bit of light. If I remember right, yes, we need to climb the tower. The stone that cries. All the members of the Mac and Mouse clan were in the great hall. So none of them knew about the 6 shadows slinking around the corridor. The discussion was very heated, and an angry squeak could be heard above the others, even through the thick castle walls. Bridget's right. Her relatives don't do anything but argue. Violet whispered. Follow me, Ewan said. I know a shortcut. The rattling knew all the corridors and passageways like the door of his back paw. The little group reached the tower in no time. The wooden staircase that led to the top of the tower was very narrow, and the stairs creaked. The howling wind blew, and through the many cracks in the old stone. Brrr, Colette whispered to Nikki. This place is creepier than Count Ratula's crypt. Nikki nodded. The whole tower was crumbling like a house of house cheese crackers. Here, hold my paw. Once they reached the top, Violet took charge. Okay, let's start looking, everyone. Remember, we need to find a stone on mouselets who's crying. A heavy rain beat down on the tower. The mouselets ran their paws on every other inch of the stone wall around them. After a few minutes, Nikki shook her snout in disappointment. There's nothing that looks like a rodent crying up here. But there must be, Paulina replied. The tapestry clearly pointed to this spot. You're right, said Pam. We found the other stone right where the map said it would. Let's keep looking. All mice began to examine the stones one more time, but it was no use. They all looked the same. Suddenly, there was a flash of lightning above them, and the tower shook. Crack! The lightning illuminated one of the windows right in front of Violet. She couldn't believe her eyes. Just outside the window was a stone in the shape of a mouse. Violet called the others over and carefully approached the window. A gargoyle shaped like a female rodent was sticking out of the tower wall. Because of the rain, it looked like the tears were rolling down her snout. The stone that cried, Colette cheered. Hooray, cried the other mouselets. After finding the stone in the kitchen, these sisters knew what to look for. A mechanism made of bronze and shaped like a thistle flower. Here, Pam cried all of a sudden. Look, there's a carving of a thistle under the ledge. Ewan pursued on the mechanism, which was a little rusty after several centuries, and clock. The bronze flower moved upwards, and part of the ledge opened. Beneath it was a compartment that held an ancient box. Inside the box was another parchment. It must be the will. Ewan declared. That's the Mac and Mouse's coat of arms next to Alice's signature. Quick, let's move those paws, Nikki urged. We need to show this to Bridget. As they scurried down the stairs, Violet peeked out the window and caught a glimpse of the car approaching the castle. It was the police, but who could have called them? Help is here. A few hours before Bridget had tried to reach Violet on the phone. She was very worried, but she hadn't heard any news from these sisters, and she knew they were in trouble. Bridget tried every one of the mouse's numbers. Just kept ringing and ringing. After pacing back and forth nervously for a while, Bridget gathered up her courage and decided to get to the castle. She had to find out what had happened to her friends. Bridget, I'm not letting you go alone, Ben said. I'm sure those 5 mouses are in trouble. We need to help. Ben used his two-way radio to notify the Oaks Mouse police. I've known all the police mouse since they were wee barns, only this high. I know they'll do me a favor. Meanwhile, the great hall of McNamara's castle, the arguing suddenly grounded to a halt. Angus was winning the day, and now the clan just need to vote by a show of paws. There wasn't much doubt about what the ancient castle's fate would be. In the end, even the last undecided rodents gave in to Angus. So the old rodent concluded, threateningly, "Who here argues with me to propose the castle turn into a modern amusement park?" Raise your paws. Just then the door flew open and Bridget burst into the room. She was angrier than a cat with a bad case of fleas. 2 police mice were right behind her. "There are the Thea sisters," Bridget shouted. "What have you scoundrels done to my friends?" Her arrival had an amazing effect. Angus's snout turned as pale as mozzarella. He stared at her disbelief. Liam and Connor turned bright red as if they were sitting on the hot coals with burned parchment. "Bridget, my dear," Aunt Lillian chirped happily. She ran towards her niece with open arms. "Finally, you're here, and just at the right moment." Bridget gave her aunt a quick hug, but she had more important matters to attend. She turned to her Uncle Angus. Violet, Nicky, Paulina, Pamela, and Colette came to the castle. "I'm sure of it. So where are they?" Then she pointed at Liam and Connor. "Where are my friends? Why haven't they answered my calls?" "How should I know?" Liam replied. Shrugging, he cast a nervous look at the police mice behind her. They got tired of looking at old clothes, so they left. Connor declared, "Isn't that right, Erin? Tell them." Yes, Erin stammered. Her fur turned redder than a gold hamster. They got tired of looking at all the old junk. The French mouse said it. It was molded than a braai on a baguette. Mystery revealed. Bridget didn't believe a word her cousin shrieked. She was more determined than ever to uncover the truth, so she turned to the police mouse. "We must look for them quickly. I'm sure something dreadful had happened to them. They must be trapped somewhere in the castle." "Bridget, stop this nonsense at once," Angus thundered. "I won't allow you to make accusations like that." "And I will never agree to let them search my castle." Before he could finish, through his squeak was drowned out by a happy shout. "Bridget, we found it!" With a blast of wind and rain, the Thea sisters, Ewan, scampered into the violet-led the group. She was overjoyed as she threw herself in Bridget's paw. "We found it! We found it!" Liam and Connor moved towards her, gnashing their teeth, but the other mouses blocked off their path. "Paws off," Pam ordered the 2 troublemakers. "You better not touch a whisker on any of us," Nicky added. "You cheeseheads burned the wrong parchment. Ha ha," Colette chuckled. The police mouse came forward. "Are these your friends, Bridget?" "What have they found?" Violet cleared her throat and held up the parchment triumphantly. "The will of Alistair Mouse." A murmur of amazement rippled through the group. Violet poured the will to Aunt Lillian, who examined it closely. This was a long pause. Then Lillian squeaked, "Without a doubt, this is Alistair's will. It says that the legitimate heir of the castle is—" All the McNamara's hold their breaths. "Malcolm the Loyal and his descendants." Shouts of amazement and disbelief echoed through the hall. Ewan was astounded. Bridget was beyond happy. "Oh, Ewan," she clapped her paws. "Grandfather would be so pleased." These sisters celebrated enthusiastically. "Hooray, woohoo!" Alistair couldn't have chosen better. All of Malcolm's descendants have chosen. He could show the courage, the loyalty, and love, the tradition that Alistair McNamara was won on his land. Angus was livid. He lunged at Lillian and tried to snatch the will from her paws. "It can't be, it's not valid." But Ewan was quicker than a cat. With a ball of yarn, he leaped across the room and tackled Angus. "That's right, Ewan," Pam cried, clapping. "You show him who's boss." The 2 policemen quickly intervened. The first police officer had paw-cuffed Angus, while the second made him hand over the parchment. Whether the will is valid or not, that will be decided by a judge. For now, we'll take it. The Theseus's mission was complete, and so was Bridget's. The castle and all its assets would finally be turned over to Ben, the most direct heir of the Malcolm Loyal. The Theseus hurried to the lighthouse with Bridget and Ewan to share the wonderful news of the old watch mouse, who was surprised and delighted. The mouses organized a party to celebrate. Ewan's mom made delicious things to eat, and the siblings sang traditional Scottish songs all night. It was an unforgettable evening. As the celebration began to wind down, the Theseus, Bridget, Ewan, and old Ben gathered around a big table. "It's a shame we never found the last stone," Paulina sighed. Violet tried to cheer up. "But to be honest, we don't exactly know where to look." But Paulina couldn't stop thinking about it. She picked up the map with the 3 spots marked on it. The third marked spots to the cliff, down 3 behind the castle. "But there's nothing there but water," Bridget replied, confused. "Who knows what third stone is hiding?" said Nicky, shrugging. Bridget smiled. "You'll see. Ben will find out once he's the owner of the castle. No thank you, he replied. I wouldn't leave my lighthouse for a castle in the world. Ewan can move into McNamaster's castle if he wants. Ewan jumped. What did you say, me? Ben nodded. You're so young, you've got more sense in your snout than all the McNamasters put together. A sly smile spread across his face. And maybe one day you'll have Bridget by your side. Ewan and Bridget both blushed. Ben's suggestion had caught them by surprise. Hooray for Bridget! Hooray for Ewan! Colette cried enthusiastically, clapping their hands. Hooray for Bridget and Ewan! The other Thea sisters shouted together. Bridget and Ewan looked at each other shyly. Ewan took Bridget's paw in his own hands. Now don't get too excited, my dear, Ben interrupted. The castle needs a lot of renovations, which require a lot of work, and renovations work mean money. Ewan sighed. His spirit sank at the thought of it. One last adventure. It was time for the Thea sisters' adventure on the Isle of Skye to come to a close. The Mousets had returned to Mouseford Academy, and so did Bridget. Not so fast. We still have 1 day left, Pam protested, crossing her arms. Colette sighed and batted her eyelashes. Let's have at least give Ewan and Bridget some time to talk. Good idea, Violet and Paulina agreed. Nikki, on the other move, had just one goal in mind, getting a move on. I don't know about you, she said, but ever since I saw the rapids on this island, I wanted to go kayaking. The night at dinner, Nikki asked Ewan where they could rent kayaks. He was determined to organize a fun outing for the last day. Bridget gladly joined the group. The next morning, all the 7 mouse set off for the riverbank. They were equipped with helmets, life vests, and double-layered waterproof jackets. They rolled the paddles until they reached the point where the river began. After that, they took the whole course at supersonic speed. The current carried the kayaks forward along the narrow, winding stream. Bridget, Colette, even Nikki, Pammy, and Paulina had Violet race down through the rapids and bubbling waterfalls. Nikki was crazy about kayaking. Even Ewan, who was a real expert on the river, had a hard time keeping up to her. Pam wasn't as skilled with the boats as she was with engines, but she managed to keep up her kayak from capsizing in the waves. Colette, who was sitting behind Nikki, and Violet, who was sitting behind Ewan, quickly gave up paddling the sides of the kayaks to keep her from flying out and shutting her eyes so tightly so they wouldn't have to watch. Bridget and Paulina were the true wonders on the trip, though. They made their way calmly, paddling in perfect harmony. At the end of the course, the stream flowed into the sea. The 4 kayaks floated to the island's high cliffs right behind McNamaster's castle. At the moment the tip and the tide was particularly low, Paulina pointed to a stone arch that was barely distinguishable from the rock surface. What's down there? Violet leaned over to get a better look. It looks like some kind of entrance right at the water's surface, but it can't be, Bridget replied. There's nothing but rocks down there. And yet, Ewan wondered aloud, quickly rowing over there so we could see it up close. It's definitely an arc. It's not a natural opening. Let's go look. The stone that fishes. It was a big arc, and the kayaks passed through it without any trouble. The Thea sisters and their friends made their way into the cave out of a rock. The floor sloped down towards the water, so the top half was dry. The rodents clambered out of the kayaks and continued on paw. At the back of the cave, there was a tunnel and a staircase with steps carved into the wall. Where are we? Bridget whispered. The staircase came to an end in a small room full of cobwebs. It was narrow and cramped, with a strong odor of sea salt and mold. The only entrance was the way they had come in. You could get to the cave only by sea. It's a secret hiding place, Pamela said. It's a place for fishing equipment. I guess, Paulina added, pointing to a pile of moldy fish nets. Violet brushed away an enormous cobweb and moved closer to the wall. The stone that fishes, she exclaimed. On the wall was a large marble plaque decorated with carvings of fish in it, with a bronze thistle. The 3rd stone! I can't believe it, Paulina squealed with excitement. Let's open it. Ewan grabbed the thistle flower tightly, and after a bit of struggle, the mechanism finally clicked open. This time it wasn't just a tiny compartment that opened, but the whole stone. Behind it lay an ancient chest. The 7 young rodents gazed at it in astonishment. It was so quiet you could hear a cheese-like drop. After a moment, Ewan yanked at the padlock and that kept the chest shut. The lock was so rusty it crumpled in his paw. Holy cheese, this is more thrilling than a trip to Mousey World, Pam whispered. Slowly, Bridget opened the lid. Everyone jumped with surprise. Inside the chest was treasure. On Monday morning, as they had promised, Bridget, Colette, Nika, Pamela, Paulina, and Violet were back at Mouseford Academy. The headmaster and Professor Ratcliffe wanted to know everything that had happened, so their sisters told them the whole story. When the Mouselets finished their story, Professor Ratcliffe concluded, thanks to the treasure you found, the Herr Mouse's castle shouldn't have any trouble restoring it. No, no trouble at all, Violet confirmed, beaming. And because of all the publicity there has been on TV, soon tourists from all over the world will come see the castle. Colette added, the restorations will be done following strict rules of conservation. Bridget explained, the castle has been declared a National Historic Monument. Professor Ratcliffe nodded with satisfaction. Well done, Mouselets, very well done indeed. That was a high praise from the professor. The Thea sisters and Bridget left the headmaster's office feeling cheerful. Bridget in particular was high-spirited. I've never been able to talk in front of the headmaster without stammering before, she confessed to her friends. Rock on, mouse friend, Pamela complimented her. Our Bridget has discovered the inheritance from the great leader Azarstar, Nikki declared, smiling. She found the strength and the courage of a true Highlander. Willett added more. Colette had a different story. Norway Mouselets, love had made her stronger than more of a sure of herself. Paulina nodded. Even if they are apart for a while, Ewan will be waiting for Bridget when she returns to the Isle Sky. Bridget's eyes were shining at the words, but she shook her snout, embarrassed. What are you squeaking about? You got it all wrong. It's true that I feel strong about this adventure, but it's because I've had 5 precious friends. I couldn't have done it without you, Mouselets.